So let's talk about class B minus, C minus apartment buildings because I get this a bunch and we own a few of these and it's really unique and it's uniquely different. So when people are evaluating them, so there's a couple distinct differences. The biggest one's obviously tenant quality and then just general maintenance of the property. And then the impacts of that tenant quality on the financial analysis. So one thing that we really see on kind of class C apartment buildings is when you look at the financials, you have to almost take a point in time and look backwards like 3 months because the tenants inherently are just behind on rent. And if you have good management in place or you manage your property well, you eventually end up getting that income, but it just kind of comes over time. So, like for example, we've got a 44 unit apartment complex. It grosses on average about $30,000 a month, right? But if I look at the financial performance of a given month, I'm really only going to typically see about $22,000 to $23,000 in that month at that point in time. But if I look back 3 to 6 months, I see that I'm actually averaging close to $30,000 a month in that type of asset class. And it's just because some of the tenants get behind and then they catch up. They catch up with waves of income, they lose their job and they eventually catch up. It's just you run this kind of ongoing kind of reimbursement of back rent. And you have to kind of look at it on a backward looking model because if you look at it at any given time, it's shockingly low. And you just have to have the excess reserves in a property like that to know that the rent is coming. It just kind of comes over time to get to that. And when you average it out over a year or kind of backwards looking, say trailing 12 months, you'll see that, okay, yes, the average does get to that $30,000 a month. It's just the timing in which you actually get those funds captured. So it's really unique when you look at class B minus to C level kind of apartment complexes when it comes to that. Also, just the general tenant quality, you're running with some Section 8 tenants typically, but you're also just dealing with tenants just that have life issues that come up and you just have to be willing to kind of adjust a little bit because if you're taking sharp action on those tenants at the same pace that you would say if you owned a B or B plus building, then you're always going to be just turning over these tenants. And the long term, they actually do pay as you would expect. It's just when the revenue comes in. What we do see is that we do see a little bit more turnover on those properties as well. And you have to account for obviously a higher vacancy factor because maybe not because at any given time it's vacant, but because you have a couple of units that are in eviction and then the tenants are moving out and it takes time and they have to do the repairs when they move out. So you have to have a bigger buffer in the operating expenses for tenant turn and then also a higher vacancy factor because really vacancy / collections, not because the property is necessarily vacant, but because the collections are back. So you have to put a bigger figure in there for that as you're looking for forward-looking projections. Additionally, you have to assume a greater amount of just common area cleanup, car removal, just things that come up when you start talking about C-level assets. Now, they typically work really well in a cash flow model, and you get a greater amount of cash flow out of those assets, but they are far more management intensive, and you have to understand that any given point in time, the financial performance isn't what it actually is. And you have to kind of train yourself to look at the financial performance on a backward looking basis because in a given period of time, it's not the true picture of what's going on.